right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first of the 2021 Backcountry Skiing and Spliffboarding series. I'm so excited to be doing this. I learned how to backcountry ski a few years ago, and I'm still learning. It's totally been a process, so it's really fun to be able to have these experts come and share how they're doing it, and I'm really excited for us all to learn together. So a few notes before we get started. The first is that, of course, we have a chat. So if you're logged onto the website, you'll see that below the video. If you are on Facebook, obviously there's a chat underneath the video there as well. Same with YouTube. Please be kind to one another, supportive. This is a space for beginners. So ask questions, and if you do know the answer, feel free to jump in. At the end of the night, after Marko's done with the main part of the presentation, we will go in there and answer questions. So don't worry, those questions will get answered. It just might not be immediately. And then finally, before we jump in, this entire series, and I should say, tonight's the first one, but we have author David Goodman, who wrote Best Backcountry Skiing in the Northeast next week, and a whole slew of events through February and March. It's all presented by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, and we love them. They help us do cool stuff all the time and get outdoors and enjoy outdoors. And along with these presentations, we're also doing this really cool adventure grant. We did send an email about it, and I'll also drop a link in the comments. But if you're planning on going on a really cool adventure and you want a little bit of encouragement and a small stipend to go do it, we are taking applications and reviewing them this week and next week. And we're going to pick 5 ambassadors to be sent out on your own backcountry adventure. So that's what's going on with us. And with that, I'm so excited to introduce Marko. Marko, thanks for being here.
It's wonderful.
Yes. So just to get started, when and where did you learn to ski?
Definitely. So I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, and really my home resort was actually Seven Springs. Not a great ski resort, especially compared to anything that I'm skiing now, but nonetheless, it was where I learned and really sort of where my interest in skiing and just getting outdoors in the winter took off. From there, I started skiing when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And, by middle school, I think I was skiing, I would say almost on a weekly basis. And that was the first time I actually got out west. So that was totally new and exciting and kind of fed that fire more. And then by high school, I was organizing trips high school and college was organizing trips with friends. And yeah, it's just sort of one thing led to the next, and I kept trying to both get better and explore different kinds of terrain and places that came along with the traveling.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like when people start to get into backcountry, it's because they do have this history with skiing or snowboarding, and they love it and they just want to keep pushing the sport. So I'm wondering if you remember a time when you realized that skiing was a passion for you.
Yeah, definitely. It was really definitely around the middle school age, I realized that this is something that I'm truly interested in and I want to continue to get better. I think I like the physical challenge of it, or the physical challenge that can come with it, but also sort of the nature aspect of just exploring what's outside and not being caged up at home all the time. And it seemed to people that, there's this stereotype that winter is, you're always trapped inside, it's cold, it's bothersome. And I kind of embraced the other end of that spectrum. And skiing was a way to get there.
Yeah. I feel like when people are like, I hate winter, I'm like, we got to get you a winter sport. That's going to make all the difference. It'll get you excited about snow.
Exactly. And honestly, I think it feels warmer outside whenever it's snowing or right after a storm. I don't know. Maybe it's just all of the positive energy that comes with that.
And the movement, right?
Yeah, definitely the movement. And if it's extra cold, I'll probably drag somebody or myself into moguls or something that requires a little bit more energy.
Exactly. And I think obviously tonight's about backcountry skiing and touring.
Yeah.
The next question I was going to ask was, when did you start? But I would actually love if you could take a second and just kind of share your definition of that, because I do think there is some, some gray area with that. So I'd love to hear from you, like, what is your definition of backcountry skiing and touring? And then
Yeah, I would say, touring is, for me, whenever you put your skins on. So as soon as you start moving uphill, you're touring. You could be within a resort, you could be in the woods, you could be in the backcountry. To me, that is touring. And then, it gets a little bit complicated because there's resort skiing, traditional resort skiing, where you take the lift, or even you go up, and you could be touring on the way up but descend within the lift. So there's that aspect, which is resort. There's the side country aspect, where that could be within the premise of a resort and it could be avalanche controlled. And then there's also side country that is considered just beyond the resort and you exit through the gates. And some people might even loop that into backcountry. Backcountry is totally out in the open, no avalanche mitigation. You're sort of left to your own devices and yeah.
Yeah. And I should add, just for everyone who is here, we are doing a talk on uphilling at the resort, which is kind of like this middle area where you can maybe work on your fitness a little bit and learn your gear and all of that in a more controlled environment. So that is coming, but not the topic of tonight. So Marko, when did you get into backcountry touring? How did you find it?
Yeah, it was really, I would say, about 6 years ago when that was really my first time getting out into the backcountry and exploring what else was out there. Probably around high school, I started skiing some bowls that were considered side country. And I think that also started to fuel a desire as to, wow, what else is out there and how do I get out there in a safe, responsible way? So the side country allowed me to do things safely and responsibly. And from that, I would say it funneled an avenue to explore how to get into the backcountry in the safest way possible. Just because there are a lot of dangers that come with that. So you really have to understand the decision-making processes and all of the risk factors, because things can go wrong quickly, and you want to know how to be able to deal with the situations as they arise.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this whole event tonight is just about how Marko got started. We definitely recommend people take official classes like the avalanche training before going out, because it is dangerous. So thank you for mentioning that.
Definitely. And with that, so I began, I guess I didn't fully answer your question, but I began inside the resort exploring the side country bowls. And that led me to asking, how else do I get out there? So I started really reaching out to people, reading everything online, which led me to AIARE, the American Avalanche Institute, they have a few certification courses to maintain backcountry knowledge, and they cover topics like understanding the snowpack, how avalanches can occur, and just designing your plan for the day to mitigate risk as much as possible. So that was certainly fundamental in my education, in my backcountry education, and then sort of the first aid or first responder side of it, which I took through NOLS, the Wilderness First Responder. A lot of guides have this certification, so it's really how to treat injuries and diagnose them in the backcountry whenever you're out of the front country help.
Yeah, and honestly, the woofer is great for all seasons.
Definitely, I would recommend it whether you're in New York City or even in a remote area, as response times can be slow anywhere.
Exactly. And I actually want to go back to side country. Can you talk a little bit more about how you figured out which side country areas you wanted to go into before you even got into backcountry?
Yeah, so this again started within the resorts side country, and I think my first time really outside of the gates, I knew the dangers, and obviously on the gates they have a written paragraph that you're assuming all risks, and there's no liability, and you're on your own. So the first time really exiting the gates, I wanted to do so with somebody who knew where they were going. So I ended up hiring a guide for the day, and that's really what continued my motivation to get outside and to want to be able to do this on my own one day.
Yeah, and well, let's jump into gear. So did you need any extra gear for side country? And then let's talk about building your setup. How did you go from zero to where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, anytime you exit the resort out west, especially when you're in avalanche terrain, the first three items that anybody will tell you are beacon, shovel, probe. A beacon is basically so that should anything go wrong, people can locate you. I think anyone would recommend carrying this, even whether you're on the east or west or any part of the world, just so that even if you fall into a tree well or into a riverbed or something goes wrong, somebody can find you with the beacon. The shovel is so that you can move snow, and the probe is so that you can, should you be buried, somebody can probe into the snow and hopefully strike you, so that they know where to dig you out. Along with that, I started actually. I had a downhill pair of skis, the Rossignol Soul 7s, and not an ideal backcountry setup, especially nowadays as there are lighter options available. But that was really the first ski that got me out. It's I think about a 106 underfoot, so definitely capable of handling anything all terrain. So it was good, but it was very heavy. And this is where, I wish I had somebody to tell me the differences between a heavy ski and a light ski, and what is better for touring. With that, I also had a very heavy binding. I think I would definitely recommend like an atomic shift or the Salomon shift, which is sort of designed for people who are interested in getting to the backcountry, but who also ski the resort. I think that's sort of the perfect binding to mount on a ski, and have the in-resort capability, but also be able to start touring anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, and I'll also give a shout out to my Marker Kingpins. I really like them because they have like a pretty burly back, so I'm like less afraid of popping out of them. And so as someone who's like kind of newer to the backcountry, there's some sort of like more
safety
mental.
And right. Yes, they have the DIN setting, which is appealing, and I guess those are the pros. As I continued my journey in backcountry education, I wanted to go basically as light as possible. So there are solutions, and especially if you look at Skimo, which is sort of the racing aspect, or trying to navigate in the backcountry as fast and light and quickly as possible, there are skis and bindings designed for all of that. So I think a good sort of backcountry ski is anything around 100 millimeters underfoot, and the shift binding. I also will obviously carry a spare puffy, a first aid kit, my skins. Usually if I'm ski mountaineering, I will carry an ice axe and crampons and a helmet, and always a headlamp, because let's just say I've gotten I've gone past sundown several times, and I wish I had a headlamp.
And is this just a normal headlamp? Do you take anything special for if you're skiing?
Yeah, just a normal headlamp. Like Black Diamond will have these, just anything that you can sort of throw onto your forehead, and it'll certainly help to brighten things up when it gets dark.
Yeah. Also, we have Eric in the chat is saying that he also loves shifts.
Oh, the shifts. Yeah, they've gotten great reviews, and they're not too heavy either. So
yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, and I'll also just put this out there. Everyone feel free, if you have more gear questions, put those in the chat, and we'll circle back to those at the end. Okay. So that's your kind of core gear that you use when you're heading out. I think one
Yes.
thing I did want to ask was like, if you're someone who's brand new and don't want to spend a ton of money getting to know this sport, is there an option
Yes.
to use the gear you already have, or use parts of it?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did. Like I said, on my Rossignol Soul 7s, I just took the binding off because all of this stuff, it gets astronomically expensive very quickly. So I mean, if you haven't removed the bindings on your skis and you already have like a pure alpine binding, you can take those off. And also, I would really recommend like Facebook Marketplace, for example, or there are reused gear shops around. I know there's one in Burlington, Vermont, for example. And yeah, a lot of the reused gear, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And also, you know, for going out and even buying new gear, both Backcountry and skimo.co. Skimo.co, they're extremely knowledgeable, and I mean, I've used them. They've helped to refer me to, you know, what's hot industry tech wise. So, and obviously reading the latest blogs and kind of cross-referencing information with friends and people who work in the industry.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned it, but just to clarify for everyone, Skimo is, I guess, a movement or a sub-sport of this larger sport. I don't know how you would describe it. That is more focused on speed. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, they're wearing even, you know, skin tight suits and literally don't even have a backpack, and they're going purely for time.
Right. Yeah. So something to work up to, I think. All right. So you have all your gear now. You know you're into this sport. How did you figure out where to go?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, you know, first I started within the resort, and within the resort, you want to get used to your gear and what you have and how it works, and just gaining that overall familiarity. So honestly, I you know, first started kind of skinning within the resort. Most resorts will have an uphill travel policy, designated areas about where you can skin uphill. So that was definitely one of the best solutions for gaining that familiarity. But you know, outside of the resort, there are a lot of guidebooks out there and sort of sought after descents in various places of the world. So I put together some of the sources that I used, or that I use, and I sent them to Sarah in a slideshow. So definitely that will be available. But you know, the AIARE course that I took, they sort of walk you through how to build a daily agenda, choosing having a list of objectives. So, you know, plan A, plan B, plan C. If neither of those work, you know, what do you do? How do you safely descend? And the backcountry is definitely, you want to have a precise plan and understand all of the factors that have gone into creating that day. So it could be snowfall, it could be the sun. So there are places like the weather centers for these places. They will publish daily avalanche bulletins, reports to summarize what has been happening, the snowpacks. Also on their websites, they will show recent avalanches. And I also get a lot of this information from social media. Mount Washington, for example, has an observatory, and in addition to writing a daily bulletin summarizing the conditions, you know, they'll post on social media, and this is done all over the country. So you can see exactly what is happening in the snowpack in, you know, pretty much anywhere, and what the problems are, and you know, how you can start to plan your day, or the factors that you should be considering for that particular day.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the ways after I took my Avalanche 1 class that I kind of like practiced, I guess, was to read the avalanche reports, because it's just that, you know, like you said, Mount Washington.
Exactly. Yeah. And located on the east, it's, you know, you want to continue practicing what you learned and being able to understand what's happening. So for me, I target very specific opportunities out west whenever the conditions align in my favor. And one of the ways that I follow and understand what's happening is by reading these bulletins and posts on a daily basis, and keeping up to date on social media to see visuals of what's happening, or visuals of what might be summarized in the report. So, that is extremely helpful for me. And then as far as choosing, there are many guidebooks pertaining to specific areas. On the East, there's David Goodman's book. Whenever I was in the Sierras, there's a very specific Sierras book. That's sort of how I choose my objectives and figure out how I'm going to pursue those.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I think I said this, but David Goodman is coming to join us next week. So if you want to ask him questions, y'all can. I'm going to go back one slide too and ask you about these bullet points. What are all these examples of technology? Do you use all of them every time you go out? What's your favorite?
Yeah. Yes. So it's funny because we've become ever more reliant on our phones, but it just makes your life so much easier. So obviously, whenever you are in the backcountry, you want to be conserving your phone battery in case you actually need to use your phone for something. I generally will have it on airplane mode, and especially because there might be some interference with the beacon signal. So, and I try to keep it in separate parts of my body. So phone in bottom left pocket, beacon is on the right side, something along those lines. But anyway, for navigation, I generally use Gaia. It's an excellent GPS app. It'll connect to the satellites. It'll show you exactly where you are. There are different types of maps, satellite maps, topographic maps, and you can actually set waypoints, and there are interactive features so that you can share routes, you can record your routes, and that's really a great way. And you can even download routes that either friends have done, or it's a great way for staying on track.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome.
Another one is BCSOS. This is actually a newer app, and I actually learned about this from somebody who I follow on Instagram. It's basically a way to alert and send an SOS signal if should anything go wrong in the backcountry. I haven't used it much since I just downloaded it this season, but I would say it's a must download if you're in avalanche prone terrain touring. So another one that I use is FatMap. This is kind of a 3D interactive map, so it's really interesting to be able to understand visually sort of what kind of terrain you're negotiating. I like this. It syncs with Strava, and Strava is another app that I use, which is more of a fitness tracker. But it will show you your routes, or it could be what you want to ski or what you have skied, and it will sync it into the map, and it's just a great way to visually understand what you did or what you want to do.
Cool.
And then two other quick ones, I guess, notably here. One is Avalanche, pretty self-explanatory. It's basically from the Avalanche centers summarizing what the problems are in different areas, and weather apps, definitely. NOAA is great, and I also use weather.gov for that. So understanding both from the avalanche reports and from these more meteorological websites what the weather is and how it will affect my day.
Cool. Well, before we go on to the next slide, I actually just wanted to let everyone know that FatMap is actually, members of FatMap have been Mappy Hour speakers before, and we're all friends. So they're going to be offering everyone who's attending a voucher to use some of their premium products. So I will be sending that out in the follow-up email tomorrow. So get excited. Y'all can try FatMap through this voucher code. So just wanted to let everyone know about that. And Marko, should we go on to the general resources page, or should I go to the next page?
Actually, you know what? I forgot to mention, I think in all of this, one thing that I think is definitely very important is the training aspect, because things can get grueling and it's just an exhausting activity, especially if you're out there all day. So, whenever I'm in the city, it's very tough. As I live in New York City, it's, I don't really have the mountains in my back door. So, I have been attending small classes in a gym studio, and basically it is high intensity interval training. I think that's extremely effective. And has certainly prepared me for very long days. I might do, there's also another book out there, Training for the Uphill Athlete. If you do have mountains that are in your backyard, it's become essentially the Bible to any ski mountaineer, alpinist, and has been touted by a lot of renowned athletes.
Cool. So you do like high intensity interval training. Do you also do some level of like endurance, longer sessions?
Yes, I will. One day, 1 or 2 days a week, I might go for just a long 60 to 90-minute run, call it, or something along those lines.
Yeah,
so that could be.
Right.
And through that, I've discovered and seen a lot of the city.
Yeah. That's so. We did a trail running talk in October, and one of the speakers, who also is a trail runner, said that they'll just go run for an hour and a half, and then wherever they end up, figure out a bus or subway to take back, which I thought was very fun.
Right. And that's that. Whenever I run in the city, I generally don't carry my phone. It's just my subway card and a credit card should I need to get a bottle of water or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I know, this is definitely based and focused on the intro part of it, but I am wondering, like, even for an intro backcountry skier, how do you go from the city to skiing? Do you take a day to adjust? Do you ski in a resort for a day just to get your legs under you? Like, how do you transition from, sea level New York City to the mountains?
The mountains, yeah. It's tough, and it's changed through the years. So, previously, and especially when I was first starting, it was more of blocking off maybe a week to be able to do it.
Oh, wow.
Or a shorter amount of time, 4 or 5 days, maybe ski one day in the resort. I remember when I was actually looking at some more serious objectives, and I was still somewhat new, and I said, I want to ski 5 or 6 days in a row in the backcountry, and I was like, are you certain you want to do this? It's extremely physically intensive. Most people who are skiing in the backcountry doing these types of tours, it's like 2 or 3 days max. So, it really depends on your training, your physical ability, and your desire to get out. But yeah, I would say starting with like a 3-4 day chunk, maybe 1 day in the resort, just to get the feel of skiing again, and help to get acclimated. I think that's definitely helpful. Now, generally, I do this on extremely fast turnaround time, so I'll have a very, very specific objective in mind. I usually talk with people in those areas about when there's a weather window that I can actually ski these, because some of them can be intense and just very conditions dependent. And I might fly out on a Thursday and be back in the city on a Sunday. So literally, as fast as I physically can.
Very fast.
Yes, exactly.
Head into the mountains and back. Yeah. All right. And so you mentioned multi-day trips. Where do you stay when you're on these longer trips?
Yeah, on the longer trips, it really depends. If it's in a ski town, it might even be a hostel. There are great hostels that are like $30 a night. I'm never there during the day anyway, so I will definitely do that. Other times it might be a hotel, and then if it's abroad, for example, there are like alpine huts. Even in Vermont, there are like huts that are in the backcountry that you can link tours to and do multi-day trips. So I guess it really depends on the objective. But but you also, if you're in a more connected area, it's nice to go back to a hotel and unwind and, clean up after a long day.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah. And I was going to say, I think next week, David can talk about the Vermont huts a little bit. I don't know. I'm 90% certain they're all full at this point for this year, but it is something to plan ahead for. And I know for our Denver chapter, there's a bunch of huts all throughout Colorado that people can like skin out to, ski, go back inside and kind of have a vacation in the mountains via their skis, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So what was the hardest thing that you came upon when you were just starting out, either to learn or to do?
Yeah. I would say like skinning was just very tough and frustrating at first. It's especially when conditions are a little bit firmer, say in the spring, and you're starting early and things get icy. It's really easy just to either fall back, or if it's a tight kick turn, it's just tough to and psychologically, it's tough, and maybe skiing or touring and ski mountaineering and these activities are type 2 fun in the sense that they're not necessarily fun in the moment, but then you look back on the day and you're like, wow, that was an amazing opportunity and experience that I just had. So skinning and sort of that physical aspect is definitely extremely tough. And the other aspect is just getting the know-how to be able to do this. I wish I would have known about an event like this when I was first starting, but just being connected to the right people and the right resources, that was just extremely hard. Knowing what gear to get, where to go, what to do, a lot of the questions that you're asking me.
Yeah, and this sport is gaining popularity, but it's still incredibly small in terms of people who are doing it. So absolutely, the resources definitely need to be built, and that is part of what we're trying to do here. All right, and yeah, what's been like the best moment for you when you've been out backcountry skiing?
The best moment for me, always, I would say, whenever you ski something, a particular objective that you have in mind, at the end of the day, it almost feels like you got away with something, or I don't know, there's just it's special to really be able to leave civilization and to go far out and to ski what you're actually seeking to ski, and to do it safely and then to come back. And obviously that's the goal all the time when you go out. And yeah, there was one experience actually whenever I was in the Tetons, which is probably my favorite backcountry memory, so to speak. And this was my last day there. I was scheduled to leave, I think it was like a 2 p.m. flight. And I started skinning probably around 3 or 3:30 in the morning. And so you typically start super early, just because things are very firm and it allows you to get up safely and to ski things whenever the snow becomes nice and soft and powdery. So that's generally why you leave in the morning. So 3-4 a.m. starting. There was rain forecasted, some snow, maybe some slates. Totally mixture of precipitation. And within an hour of skinning, it just started pouring rain. So we're not sure if we're going to ski what we set out to ski. We're continuing. We've got our shells on. It's just pounding rain down low at 6,000 feet. Our objective was at 12,000 feet, and it was right on that border. So we were optimistic and wanted to continue. We reached the top maybe by about 11, and that left about 4 hours to ski our objective, get back to the car, and for me to get to the airport, which, you check into the airport typically an hour and a half before the flight. So actually
do another talk that's just about squeezing as much into as short a period of time as possible. Exactly.
And we ended up getting to the top, skiing our objective. The clouds broke, and it actually led to the picture on the last slide. So that is yes. One more on it's on the thank you slide. Yeah, so that is the picture of this, and you can see that the clouds are down low, we're above, and it just like the sky just opened up. So we ended up making it. We ended up skiing our objective, and it was an absolute sprint to get back to the car. I ended up sinking on top of this frozen lake, about knee deep in frigid water. And you know, like I said, the conditions changed. So whenever we skinned across at night, it was totally frozen. Things got a little bit softer, and in the middle of the lake, they got so soft that you're not going to sink all the way through, is because the way the lake freezes. But it definitely made for a memorable experience. And I got to the airport like, as they were as the gates were closing, I was soaking wet. But yeah, and then the flight attendant asked me if everything was okay. So yeah, like totally drenched and disheveled.
That's awesome. It's a great story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Definitely.
So one more question, general, before we head to Q&A. Any other tips and tricks? I can go back a slide if that's helpful. Just let me know. Yeah.
For me, since, being located in the East, especially in New York City, it is very difficult just to get out. So I'm always looking for different ways, sources. Again, most of these like educational programs, these classes through NOLS, AIARE, generally you'll take these with a class, and after the class they will you'll have the opportunity to exchange contact information. So that's a great way to find people who might be in the same area as you, who want to get out and try to ski or hike or whatever the activity is that you're looking to do. That is great. And also just being connected in social media to follow people, understand sort of the trends, the gear, again, the snowpack. I know I went over it a little bit, but I think that's extremely helpful for just staying up to date in the sport. It's almost like, sort of your current events of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the most important part in my mind as well. Cool, thank you.
And there are also like Facebook groups as well that I mean, I'm sure they pop up like once a day. So just different people in different areas. So generally, one person has a recommendation that leads to another recommendation, and before you know it, you're well integrated into a like-minded community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just plug Mappy Hour for a second. We are working on something where people can connect and find each other. So if anyone's interested in being in the beta tester group of that, my email is sarah@outdoorfest.com. Email me, I'll add you in. Because I think that's a really hard part of all of this, is finding someone who is in your area, is at the same skill level as you, has the same time off as you, and all these different pieces.
Definitely, and I did provide some resources at the end. Another thing I wanted to mention, sort of on that last topic, was just some of these guiding companies will have intros to, it could be mountaineering, or they have like small 2, 3, 4 day type seminars where you will learn the basics. It's an initial sort of sunk cost, if you will, but it kind of gets you up to speed with how to use the gear, how to use it correctly, and then you can go out and practice this on your own. So I think those are definitely very helpful, and I've left a number of links, primarily Northeast links and resources that I continue to use that I think would be very helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, and we will be sending Marko's amazing presentation and all these links out to everyone via email. So you all will get these and be able to dive a little bit deeper even. So you ready for questions?
Yeah.
All right, cool. First of all, we have people at least from New York City, Philly, and Chicago. So some national presence here, which is pretty awesome. And the first question is from Andrew, and he's asking, for your first aid kit and repair kit, are there parts of either that are a must-have that you find yourself using more often?
You know, I for my first aid kit, I generally carry just a small, it could be a day hiker kit. Also, NOLS sells some kits and they have it based on like the size. So I think there's like a 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0, 4 being the largest. I will, depending on the objective and where it is for how many days, it could be like the 2.0. So, you know, if it's a single day trip, just your basic like day hiker kit from REI or wherever is totally sufficient. Also, if I'm skiing, if I'm skinning or in the backcountry with somebody, I'll generally split things up. So I will typically carry the first aid kit. Somebody else will carry the repair kit. You know, lighter screwdriver, some screws, some tacks. Duct tape is critical. But yeah, I mean, I think there are, even just looking up what people carry and cross-referencing it. So yeah. I think those are essentials and helpful.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So Sage from New York City is asking, how long were you touring resorts and skiing in side country before you felt comfortable skiing backcountry?
Yeah. So whenever I want to ski something more serious or demanding, or even more, I would say I'd classify it as more consequential. I'll probably hire somebody to go out for the day. I think that's a great way, you know, is you don't want anything to go wrong, and I'd rather be skiing something that's, you know, on the very extreme side with somebody who's already done it many times and knows the area and the ins and outs of everything. If it's a more like mellow day approach just to get out, you know, that I sort of started. You could start once you're familiar with your gear.
Right. Awesome. Cool. That's all we have for questions, I think. Anyone else, get those questions in there now. Yeah, lots of people looking to start. So thank you so much for sharing. I'll take this slideshow out.
Okay.
And yeah, we really appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I feel like there are so many good tips that people can use now to just like start learning. And I will say again, this is just an intro for everyone. Everyone should definitely be taking some avalanche classes, learning your first responder, first aid stuff. This is not supposed to replace that at all.
Definitely.
Yeah. Addendum. All right, that's it. No more questions. With that, have a great night, everyone. I hope to see everyone next week. The 26th, we have David, who is the godfather of backcountry skiing in the Northeast. That's another event with Sierra Nevada. And the 28th, we're doing a really cool event with the North Face and Hoods to Woods, where we'll be learning about this super cool program in Brooklyn that gets kids out snowboarding. So that's next week, and hope to see you all there. And thanks again, Marko.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, y'all.